Good morning. This is the Free Minute for Monday, September 15th. Some of you have noticed we've been doing them less in recent weeks. We've shifted to a monthly cadence. There frankly wasn't enough news over the summer compared to what there was early in 2024. And so we wanted to save your inboxes and send you a monthly update instead of a weekly update. We are exploring some other options if folks want more regular updates, but we're just trying to avoid overwhelming your inboxes. So let's dive in. Over the past 30 days, there have been several major political changes and some economic changes that will directly shape the landscape for charitable giving, and we can break them down now. So first, let's dive into the economy, which is often the most important thing to talk about when we talk about charitable giving. Inflation jumped to nearly 3% in August, the highest it's been all year. Core inflation, which strips out food and energy and just looks at a basket of other goods, also above 3%. This is generally too high, say economists and the Fed. At the same time, jobless claims are ticking up. There's been some backwards revision showing maybe the economy from a jobs perspective wasn't quite as strong as we suggested. The labor market might be weakening. This combination has economists whispering about something called stagflation, which is a toxic mix of slowing growth and rising prices at the same time. Those prices are largely the result of tariff increases. What does this mean for giving? Typically, when inflation is high, everyday households tend to cut back on things they don't feel like they totally need, which often, unfortunately, includes charitable donations. At the same time, if unemployment goes up, demand for services obviously goes up for many of you all as well. So this is a classic nonprofit squeeze, right? More need and less funding. The silver lining here is that markets remain at near record highs, and many expect the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates later this year. Usually, interest rates going down increases asset prices overall. Warren Buffett says interest rates are gravity for asset prices. The higher they are, the lower the asset prices. The lower they are, the higher asset prices are. And so things like stock giving becomes really important. And then assets that are invested, donor advised funds, uh, private foundation endowments, right? Qualified charitable distributions, all of these become much, much more important. Second, let's shift to tax policy. So many of you know this has happened in July, not August, but donors are really starting to get their heads around the quote unquote one beautiful bill over the summer, and changes are now rippling, and nonprofits are changing the way they're thinking about giving. So starting in 2026, there will be what we call a universal charitable deduction available to all taxpayers, especially those that don't itemize and historically have been boxed out of this. So you might see some rebound from middle class donors who've been largely left out since 2017 tax changes, but there's also some other limits on wealthier donors, including the only able to deduct charitable gifts above a 0.5% floor of their adjusted gross income. Corporations also face a 1% floor, meaning anything below 1% is not tax deductible. My guess is we're going to see more asset-based gifts here to look for additional tax savings, right? When you give stock, you avoid the capital gains payments. We'll also see more batching into donor advised funds. So make sure you have a good donor advised plan. And that's going to really start this year, not next year. But we'll see nonprofits adjust fundraising strategies accordingly. We will see whether this leads to a bounce back in small donors, which have been going steadily down over the last 10 years, while major giving has been going steadily up. A third, which is unhappy news for some of you, we've seen more political oversight over nonprofit grants, particularly those from the federal government. So on August 28th, the White House issued a memo directing the Department of Justice to investigate whether nonprofits that receive federal grants are improperly using those funds for lobbying or partisan political activity. Now, let's be super clear. No laws have changed, right? So you're still free to do lobbying or advocacy within the bounds of the rules. But what has changed is the political environment. So we're likely to see more audits, um, more sort of just overall checking in, and a little bit more fear about political oversight from nonprofits, right? So some nonprofits may actually start to drift away from lobbying or advocacy. Hopefully not, but that's possible. But if you're relying on grants, be extra vigilant, clear documentation, internal controls, staff training, etc. It is also the case that we're going to see a lot more increase relying on foundation grants and private family foundations and corporate foundations, etc., for some organizations that might be pulling back from government grants. And so it becomes even more important in a competitive environment to be finding new opportunities, to be writing excellent grant proposals, to be on time. That we think there's a big benefit of being one of the early grant applicants if when a new opportunity is posted. So keep an eye for ways to do that as well. So where does this all leave us? Look, we think inflation and job losses are going to squeeze small donors. We're going to see asset prices rise. We're going to see more big donors. We're going to see a lot of these non-cash assets. We're going to see intense competition for grants and also a big benefit to folks that are really on top of that game as some federal grant making pulls back as well. That's it for this week's Free Minute. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email at patrick@freewill.com, and we will be back to you next month with more on this.